So, since the 5K special promise is still a few weeks away, and I have this gameplay that was supposed to be part of last year's Mexico Madness month, but because of time constraints, it did not manage to make it. And well, I think it's because it's a perfect time to release this video. To be honest, I really don't have an interesting introduction today, so just roll the video. So, Mexico and Fuhrerreich is in a pretty shitty position after losing the second war with the US because, of course, someone thought that it would be a great idea to invade America in the middle of a revolution, you know? So, if we are to fight those gringos yet again, we must reform this country with the sole objective on having our revenge. The first step shall be to reorganize the mess that currently is the Mexican army. The militias are not gonna cut it anymore, so it's time we get rid of them and strive for a professional army. But before we can continue any further, we must call the last election, the one that will decide the future of our country and how we deal with those Yankees. So, three men enter the ring. We have the Realistas with Calles, and because we already have seen Calles in KX, we will not be picking him. We have the Synarchists, which are also out since their focus tree is so shitty, and again, I will actually be uploading a video about them in Kaiserreich, so nope. So that leaves just the Quetzalcoatls, the Balkists, with General Carrasco. We cannot defeat those gringos all alone, even worse if we are surrounded, so we shall ally the Central American nations to avoid that being the case. And as it seems that everyone has said yes to our proposal, as such our southern flank has at least been secured. Another major issue that is plaguing in this country is the corruption that can be felt in all levels of society, just like in real life. So we must change that to have a strong government. Now we must focus on the direction of the economy, if we are to stand a chance against our northern neighbor. We can either push for a further industrialization or try to relax the heavy push for industrialization. Well, guess what? This choice actually means jack shit, as even if you choose to keep the industrializing, you can actually still take the other focus tree, but because in this case we will continue the path that we chose in that decision that was meaningless. Now we must decide the fate of the synarchism, which has governed this country in the recent years. We could either keep it, discourage it, or just straight up ban it. And the last I really like the last bonus, so synarchism? I think that's more like socialism. As we are preparing for our final encounter with the gringos, the great Quetzalcoatl is rising to its rightful place in the west as sole leader and hegemon. To secure his place and the state for internal and foreign forces, we shall empower the green shirts to keep Mexico safe. As war soon approaches, we must foster a revanchist spirit, as that's the only way we will reclaim our rightful place in the sun. We are ready, we are prepared to do what must be done, so with me, brothers, rise up! And while we're at it, we might as well reopen the military college, as we will need new talented military minds for our operation. Oh, and here's the template I used for those that keep asking for it. Oh boy, now it's time. And sadly, Fuhrerreich is so busted in the events department, so I will be using clips in Fury Redux to make it so the events actually make sense. So the Americans decided that our government has to resign and that we should install a puppet government after the incident in San Diego. But we shall never give in to those demands. It's time we enact our revenge, so it's time we go to war by Jingo. So the first thing was to gain some early victories against the American armies, and as such we crossed the Rio Grande and we even managed to capture parts of the southern Texas. But this did not last very long, and as soon we would be pushed back into Mexico proper, where I decided to set up some defensive positions over the mountainous region, where we would bleed America dry. Oh, and now that we are finally at war with America, we can finally embrace the full potential of our revanchist spirit, for we will win this conflict. But because the defensive stage of the war lasted so long, I think it's time for one of those good old casualties montages, just to not make this video a little bit too boring. Oh, and here is just a quick view at the stats so you can see how bad the situation is for the Americans. But if we just stayed in the defense, we would not achieve anything, so once again I launched 40 expeditions over the Rio Grande to keep killing off the armies in the Texas front. But I guess the US got tired of not breaking through the front, so they decided to try the southern front by declaring war on Panama, so now all of Central America was also at war. The Americans did try some few landings, but they were repelled since I learned my lesson from last time.
Flashback.
When I thought the northern front was secured, the fucking British decided to launch a naval invasion of the Netherlands, a massive one at that.
End of flashback.
At this point, the Americans were pretty weak thanks to their suicidal offensives, so I saw an opportunity to retake part of the north, and so I launched an offensive that proved to be successful enough that we retook Chihuahua and Sonora. Other offensives were launched in other fronts. The Panama Canal was taken. Another offensive in southern Texas actually worked, and we took important cities like Austin and San Antonio. But that was not the end of it. The westernmost part of the front was yet again weak in its defenses, so we took on the offensive yet again, where we finally retook Baja California and we even marched into La Alta California, taking San Diego and Los Angeles in the process. But even after all the offensives and encirclements, they just kept coming back again and again and again. It was like they just had infinite soldiers at their disposal. So it was at this moment that I realized that I could not win a war of attrition. Instead, I needed one big victory that could cripple them for good. So after recruiting some more good divisions, since most were just pure infantry, I started my great plan. My plan was to cut off the entire US by separating the west and east, making it so it's easier to clean up the west, making it so they can't use the resources they have there. It was a big gamble, as the US could not only easily reconnect both sides of the country but also cut off part of my good army, but if I wanted to win this war there was no other option, so the operation was a go. After a while I managed to cut off the western part of the east. Now the only thing was to hold the front while the western part of the army cleans up the divisions stuck in the massive encirclement that was about to take place, unless they managed to get to a boat and sail from Los Angeles all the way to Florida. All of this having to go through South America since the Panama Canal was taken early on in the war. And I'm not gonna lie, Holding this was stressful and difficult thanks to the amount of troops the Americans still had, and at some point they even managed to re-link up at the Canadian border, but I quickly managed to cut off the corridor so no US divisions could get to the east. But this started to pay off as I managed to widen the front and managed to send even more troops to hold off the east so the Western Army could do its job and clean up any resistance in the west coast. Encirclement after encirclement, city lost after city lost, the US was starting to bleed rapidly as they could no longer pump out enough troops to save the West, and eventually the West fell entirely, meaning it was only a matter of time before the East Coast fell to our might. At this point, if this was Fuhrerreich, since again, like I said before, I was actually recording in Fuhrerreich, normal Fuhrerreich, it would have actually given the option to actually peace out for getting our old claims or destroy the Vial Colombia completely. And since we have marched across the entire US at this point, we might as well just race to Washington and end the American hegemon. The entire front was collapsing even after retreating to their major cities, and after the fall of Washington they had no choice but to surrender. And again, because normal Fuhrerreich is so buggy, they never gave me the option to release a US puppet, so again by using some Fuhrerreich footage, I released a US puppet and redrew a map of North America, finally creating a world order in the Western Hemisphere that was suitable to Mexico's needs. And that was the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it was a bit buggy and weird having to use two mods because the original one is so buggy, but oh well. I finally got to share this campaign that was set to release in September last year, but again, because of time constraints, I never managed to pump it or release it in last year's Mexico Madness month. So, this was the Defectus Expert. You are dismissed, soldier.